Tucked away amid skyscrapers and parking structures in the Westwood area of Los Angeles sits some of the most exclusive real estate in the world. Hello everyone, and welcome to Little Known LA, where we show you hidden gems in some of the world's best known locations. I'm Sita, thanks for joining us. Now, if you're a regular Joe or Jane, getting into the hot spots in Hollywood isn't easy. Well, we found a place with some more unusual requirements for entry. Of course, you have to be rich and famous, but you also have to be dead.
The cemetery was founded in 1904. The first burial took place in 1905, a woman named Alice Brown. But at the time the cemetery was built, there wasn't a lot else in the area. So Wilshire Boulevard was not the busy corridor that it is today. All those high-rises were built in the last 30, 40 years. The cemetery's been there for 100 years now. At the time, UCLA existed. Westwood Village was just starting to be developed, and the Westwood Cemetery sort of started off in this little area and then got built around, which added to the seclusion of it and the remoteness of it, and I think the prestige of it. It's a little hidden gem now, but it's become more hidden over time as buildings have grown up, high-rise buildings and movie theaters and office buildings. Right there, I know people that live and work in the area who have no idea the cemetery is right there, behind literally the office where they work. Until 1962, there were no celebrity burials in Westwood. In 1962, of course, Marilyn Monroe died. And Joe DiMaggio, her ex-husband, who was still very close with her, he was devastated by her death. He made all the arrangements and he chose Westwood for two reasons. One, the secluded aspect of it, and two, because two of the women who raised her, a foster mother and a godmother, Grace Goddard and Anna Lauer, are both buried there. So I imagine Marilyn probably has been to the cemetery to visit them. He made all the arrangements. He kept out all her Hollywood friends, kept out the Rat Pack. And for 20 years after that, he had red roses delivered 3 times a week from Parisian Florist, which is still in business there on Santa Monica Boulevard. It was her favorite florist in life. So for 20 years, roses were delivered 3 times a week to the crypt. But there were always flowers in her crypt, long after he stopped doing it.
And it's easy to see that Monroe started the trend. After her death, more celebrities soon followed her to Westwood.
Some of the celebrities that are buried there along with Marilyn Monroe, Natalie Wood, Dean Martin, Burt Lancaster, Cornell Wilde, Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys.
Steve Goldstein's book, LA's Graveside Companion, where the VIPs RIP, explores the resting places of the famous throughout California. And he knows where the bodies and the stories are buried.
Westwood is often called the cemetery of tragic females because there's so many famous young women who are buried there, including starting with Marilyn Monroe and Natalie Wood and Dorothy Stratton, the murdered playmate, Dominique Dunn, who was murdered by her boyfriend, Heather O'Rourke, who died at the age of 12 after an operation in San Diego. There's lots of famous women who died tragically young who happen to all be in Westwood.
And there are other strange coincidences, like the co-stars forever together at the cemetery.
Ava Gabor and Eddie Albert, Brian Keith from Family Affair, and also Sebastian Cabot, also from Family Affair.
Burt Lancaster and Donna Reed, co-stars in From Here to Eternity, are also here for eternity. And some of the most successful collaborators in the history of film, Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, and director Billy Wilder, are all buried within 50 feet of each other.
They were all friends and co-workers for over many years. And Billy Wilder's grave, his and Jack Lemmon's both evoke Some Like It Hot, I think. Because, Billy Wilder says, "I'm a writer, but then nobody's perfect," which is the last line of his screenplay, Some Like It Hot. And Jack Lemmon's credit in that movie, he's the last one listed. It says, Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon in, which is what his grave says, Jack Lemmon in, Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot.
But it's the unintentional combinations of stars that's most interesting. Where else would you find Farrah Fawcett, Rodney Dangerfield, and Merv Griffin as neighbors?
Merv Griffin is right next to Farrah Fawcett. You wouldn't imagine those two together in any way, but Merv says, "I will not be right back after this message." Rodney Dangerfield, there goes the neighborhood. So it's an interesting little area of the cemetery.
And while most graves aim to make their celebrity contents known, other tombs contain famous remains but remain unmarked, like Frank Zappa, Roy Orbison, and George C. Scott. With all this famous company, it's no surprise that a plot in this tiny 2-acre cemetery can cost up to $500,000. And like any Hollywood hotspot, those in the know don't want to miss out. Many living and breathing celebrities have made their reservations well in advance.
Well, since Marilyn Monroe has been buried there in 1962, Hugh Hefner then bought the crypt next to her, to the left of her, as he's looking at Marilyn. The crypt to the left will be Hugh Hefner's. And he did that, I think, because he launched his magazine with her on the cover in 1953. The crypt above Marilyn is a guy named Richard Poncher. And it's not a legend, it happens to be true that he's buried face down. He's in his casket turned over so that he doesn't have his back to her for eternity. That was the request he made. And I actually know the funeral director who flipped him over, and I've also talked to friends of the family, and they all can confirm that it's true. People that are already marked who are still alive: Irwin Winkler, movie producer, produced Rocky, a lot of other movies. Ray Bradbury, the science fiction writer, his wife is buried there, and next to her, his stone is already marked with his year of birth, obviously still living. Kirk Douglas owns a plot there where his son Eric is now buried. I believe Kirk is going to be buried in that same space. Elizabeth Taylor owns space there, and her parents are there. So eventually she'll be there.
Visiting a cemetery can be a sad occasion, but there's something strangely comforting about Westwood Village Memorial Park. Here in the middle of a busy and loud city, you can share some quiet moments with celebrities we love. Thanks for joining us. I'm Alexis Sita. We'll see you next time.